Hello, and welcome to another episode of And Then What, where we talk about issues surrounding plastic pollution and ask the question, and then what? What happens to plastic once it's considered no longer useful? Today, we will be talking with Dr. Saffron Bryant. In 2023, along with 80 women from 19 countries, Saffron embarked on a 3-week expedition to Antarctica. This journey, part of Homeward Bound, was more than just a scientific mission. It was a leadership initiative designed to inspire action for a sustainable future. Dr. Bryant is a senior lecturer at RMIT University in Melbourne, Australia. Her research work bridges chemistry, biology, and physics, applying science to real-world challenges like cryopreservation, drug delivery, and wound healing. Beyond the lab, she's also a passionate environmental advocate, a writer of over 30 science fiction and fantasy novels, and a firm believer in the power of science literacy. Today, we'll be talking about her experience in Antarctica, what she learnt from her time there, and how science and sustainability go hand in hand. Saffron, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, let's start with a little bit about you. Can you share what first inspired your love for science and how you found yourself working in this field?
Yeah, I've always loved science. I think it was like my 10th birthday, I got a microscope, and I just been obsessed ever since, just trying to understand how things work. I think that was probably the key thing that drew me.
So just like a little play microscope?
Yeah. Like it was probably not obviously a real one, but you could magnify things. You couldn't see things at the microscopic scale, but it certainly magnified. So I went around the yard trying to find dead bugs and leaves and things and look at them.
Well, that's an awesome gift for children.
I think so, definitely.
You've written over 30 science fiction and fantasy novels. How does your love of storytelling connect with your scientific work?
Yeah, so I think sometimes when people hear that, they go, but they're completely opposite. How can you be, into creative things, but also a scientist? But I think in both respects, they're both ways of exploring different ways, but ways of exploring. And so in science, you're trying to find answers to questions, why? But you can also ask, what if? And a big thing that I love about science fiction is that it's asking, what if? What if we could travel through time? What if we discovered life on another planet? So it's all it's all about exploration, I think.
Yeah, that absolutely makes complete sense, seeing that connection. So tell us about Homeward Bound and what motivated you to join this expedition.
Yeah, we all hear about the underrepresentation of women in senior leadership across all sectors, but it's especially relevant to STEM, so that's science, technology, engineering, medicine, and maths. So the idea was that if you can sort of empower women within these fields and give them skills and sort of experience and confidence as well to promote themselves, that hopefully will get better representation of women at senior levels in that field. And that's something that I care about quite deeply. So that's what drew me to the program. And it also has a focus on environmental, but also social equality. And the idea is that if we had more female leadership, that issues such as environmental concerns would be more prevalent and would be looked after better than in the current system. So it's sort of the idea being that if you can equalize leadership, that we would get better outcomes for everyone, and that includes the environment.
Yeah, meaning that you have two different types of voices, like two different, the male versus female, the way they think about things.
Yeah. So it's a diversity thing, and that's not saying that women are all touchy feely all the time, but increasing diversity in all respects means that you are looking at things from many different perspectives, and that includes the perspective of the environment and of future-proofing things, as opposed to just digging everything we can out of the ground and hoping that the future will sort itself out.
Yeah, absolutely. So, speaking of Antarctica, I know that the focus wasn't exactly on plastic pollution when you were there, but did you see any signs of plastic pollution when you were in Antarctica?
I was really worried about this. Like I was worried that we'd pull in and there would just be, one of those rubbish islands or something. So I can happily report that we didn't find any rubbish islands.
Excellent.
But we did find on one of our trips a buoy, so the floating things they use in fisheries and things.
Yep.
We did find one of those floating around in the ocean down there, so we picked that up. So that was good. But that was probably the only piece we saw down there. Having said that, our voyage was quite early in the season, so there weren't many other boats around at that time. Whether there's a difference when you've got more boats around, I'm not sure.
Yeah, but not like a whole bunch of microplastics floating in the water noticeably.
No, and I didn't see any like penguins sort of tangled up in plastic bags or anything. So
Well,
thank
that's
goodness.
something good, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So there were participants from 18 different countries participating in this trip to Antarctica. What were some of the most inspiring collaborations or conversations you had during that trip?
It is so hard to narrow it down. Like every single person on that boat was just so incredible. There were people who trained to be astronauts, and people who are fighting for women's reproductive rights, and people who are, you know, developing new like equipment to solve diseases, and this like I couldn't tell you like one specific that was just the
Every
best.
conversation was just like, wow,
Every
wow.
conversation, it's like it was 3 weeks of just wow. These are so incredible people to be around.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, as part of your fundraising for this trip, you pledged to go plastic free for a week. You said nobody, apart from me, took you up on this challenge. So, what was your initial motivation for choosing going plastic free?
I just so I live in Melbourne CBD, and like I walk to work every day, and it drives me insane because I pass so much just waste, like litter, just on the streets, and I just have so much frustration. Firstly, with people who just decide that littering is okay, but that there's so much waste out there, that it would be impossible for me, for example, to pick up every piece on my way to work. I would never get to work if I did that. So it was mostly born out of frustration, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. That's really interesting because I would say 20 years ago, I lived in Melbourne and I didn't see a lot of rubbish around on the streets. And then I went away, traveled around Europe for about a year or two, and I came back to Melbourne and I saw people just walking along. I remember one guy was walking in front of me and he pulled out his packet of cigarettes with the little plastic sleeve on the end,
Yeah,
and he kind of like tossed it off like, I don't
yeah,
want that anymore. And I was like, excuse me. And I was actually really shocked that
yeah,
this happened in our country. Like I saw all of this happening in other countries as I was traveling abroad, but I
yeah,
believed that we didn't do that in Australia.
yeah.
And all of these little incidences, I was just that kept occurring. I
Hmm.
was like, wow, things seem to have changed a lot, even just 2 years. So
Yeah.
it's obviously in 20 years, it's changed a lot more. But I think that just in general, there's a lot more plastic pollution like that, not caring around, which is very interesting.
It's interesting, it's concerning, it's frustrating. I've definitely called people out on it, but I think you sometimes have to pick your moments because you don't want to be, attacked on the
Yeah,
street. Um, but
exactly.
definitely, I've called people out before, and you know what? The people I have called out, they're super embarrassed that someone like noticed and cared, and they've gone back and picked it up. So I do wonder if maybe it just takes a bit more social pressure for people to maybe think twice, because there's rubbish bins everywhere. You just hold on to it for 2 more meters, you probably put it away. So
Yeah, absolutely. So, despite nobody taking you up on that challenge, apart from me, You said that you're now planning on taking a plastic-free challenge yourself this year.
Yes.
So have you started doing this already, and how's that going for you?
It's not going
If you
well.
have.
It's not going well. So it's definitely, I've put it on my goal list for this year. I've been traveling the last little bit, which like it's even more difficult when you're traveling, I find.
Yeah, absolutely.
But sort of I've I've tried to start, and it's just, you think, okay, I'll do it this week, and then you realize that your milk comes in a plastic container, or your toothpaste or your toothbrush. You know what I mean? Like it's so it's so built in to every single part of my life that I look at it and I'm like, how can I possibly eliminate all of these plastic items from my life without also going, for example, dairy free for a week, which I think I might actually die if I did that. So it's definitely it's much harder than I thought it was going to be. I sort of go, well, I just, I won't do takeout, and I won't, buy plastic Coke bottles and things like that. But it's so much more than that. So I'd love to hear your experience.
Yeah, well, I think that's really, I obviously face the same thing. I think that things like plastic water bottles, sorry, not water bottles, I think that that's completely unnecessary, but plastic milk cartons. I mean, even if you buy the cartons that are not in plastic, they are the cardboard, they're still lined with plastic. So,
Yes.
and which is just as hard to recycle. But the plastic milk cartons are at least a better plastic that is more recycled. I don't think it's the answer. I would think, and I've seen a lot in Vancouver, they do a lot of glass bottles, which I think is great. I think that is a better solution. And I know that a place in the Tablelands in far north Queensland that they were talking about, and this was many years ago, so obviously it went nowhere, but they were talking about doing a refill type station but I guess the issue was sanitization.
Absolutely.
So how to deal with those kinds of things. But in terms of just the elimination process, it's a pick your battle. Like toothbrushes, yes, they can be switched with bamboo toothbrushes or using something that is more, I don't necessarily think more sustainable, but a electric toothbrush because you're not constantly throwing it out. It's just the head.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of dentists promote those products as well. Yeah. But they're more expensive. So that's always the issue. But I find that it's a pick your battle thing because there is just, as you say, that's just so... There's so many things to get rid of. But what would you say would be the easiest part? Like what was something that you would say would be easy to eliminate that you've found?
Well, I mean, the plastic bags at shopping centres, I mean, Australia's got rid of them mostly. But a lot of smaller shops still give you plastic bags. So if you go to specialist stores or if you go to takeaways and things, they still have plastic bags. And so I think just having a reusable bag, because you can get really, ones that fold up into really small little packages now. Just having one of those in your bag or in your pocket or something or in your purse, just so when you suddenly, you're there and they're like, would you like a bag? And you go, no, I don't. I've got one. Because I think that was one of the, it's like an easy thing that you can put in your bag, put in your purse, and you don't have to think about it. And then when it comes up, bam, you've got yourself covered.
Yeah, so I'll tell you a really interesting story about these plastic bags. When we came back to Australia, we went to the liquor store a little too much. And I blame that on the wine prices. But every time we went there, this lady was seeing us, at least once a week. And we would always say, no bag. And every time she would ask, would you like a bag? No, we don't want a bag. Yeah. And then when the plastic bag ban came in, they stopped asking, obviously, Do you want a bag? And we remember walking past her, and we'd stopped going to the liquor store, but we saw her as we walked past outside, and she said, "Oh, we haven't seen you for a while. You're the non-plastic bag people." It's like, you did know. You did know that we didn't want that bag. But I thought what was interesting was that all it takes is if that store doesn't offer it, and they didn't constantly say, "Would you like one?" Because people only say, "Oh, yeah, I'll take one." But as soon as it's not available, they're like, well, I don't really need it.
Yeah, that's right. Like, most people wouldn't go, "Can you put that in a bag?" You just take your bottle of wine or whatever it is.
Whatever product it is, yeah. So I agree. I think that is the most simple thing to do, is to eliminate take your own bag. It's very simple.
Yeah.
So as a scientist, what message would you give to policymakers about plastic waste and sustainability? Like, what do you think that policymakers, apart from saying bring your own bag, what do you think that they could do in a scientific kind of way?
Yeah, so I guess two prongs there. So from a policy perspective, I think policy drives change. So the plastic bag one is a really good example, because this new rule came in that shopping centers couldn't have plastic bags anymore, and that completely changed how they did things. The shopping centers would never have done that by themselves. So I think that having policies that enforce behavioral change, it's like it gives society, or it gives corporations the sort of kick in the backside that they might need for change to happen. And so, things like banning the stupid tiny little water bottles that they have on planes, for example, that would be something quite simple that policymakers could do that would have quite a large impact. And I mean, that goes the same for most environmental policies. Now, unfortunately, we're not seeing much change in environmental policy at the moment, but I think that policymakers have real power to drive change. In terms of the scientific aspect, as with all things, research takes a lot of money. And so we need money to be going into sustainable research, because there's a lot of work going on, and I don't know that enough of it gets sort of publicized to the public about using bacteria to break down plastics, or finding alternatives to plastics. And there's actually a lot of alternatives to plastics now, but they are generally slightly more expensive, and so companies won't take them up until they're forced to. So again, that sort of feeds into that policy framework, is that if companies were forced to use plastic alternatives, then they would. They're out there. There are options.
Yeah, and that goes back to the whole doing it when you're told to, with the plastic bags, because I found the same thing with, as soon as they were businesses were told you can't use plastic knives and forks, and you can't use plastic containers. People changed right away, but the policies had to be put in place when it really was not that difficult to do, after all. Which I actually wanted to, my final question for you was exactly what you were just talking about, but in terms of scientific solutions. So this morning I was sent an article. I haven't read the article, I'll be honest. I just saw the headline about a team of Japanese researchers who have developed a plastic that breaks down in the ocean. And some other experts that I've listened to on the topic of plastic pollution and, what do we do with the plastic afterwards, believes that he says that we simply just can't science our way out of the problem, meaning plastic eating worms and those kind of solutions, the plastic bottles in the ocean being able to break down, aren't the solution to the problem. So going back to what you have just said, do you see potential for scientific breakthroughs in in sustainable or biodegradable alternatives to plastic? Like, do you see that that is actually a solution to the problem? Or, as I like to say, and then what? What do you see the solution is to the plastic pollution problem?
Yeah, really great question. So, I mean, I never like to say never when it comes to science, because if you'd asked someone 100 years ago about the web or about smartphones, then it would have seemed impossible and science fiction. So, I think that what might be possible in 100 years, we probably can't even imagine now. Um, so I think there's two problems there. We've got the problem of existing plastic waste because we've got tons and tons of that from the last X years that's just accumulated. So we have to find a way to get rid of that. And then we've got the problem of going forward. What are we using for packaging? What are we using for cosmetic formulations and things? Because all of these use petrochemicals and plastic related compounds. So for the first one, so the existing sort of plastic waste,
Yep.
um, I think that there is options there. So there are ways to recycle it. It's expensive, which is why no one's bothered now. And so it's an expense, either financial or environmental. And I don't think that the balance is tipped enough for people to make the financial commitment yet. The research that's happening in terms of bacteria that can recycle it. I mean, anything that we can if we could just throw a vat of bacteria at a landfill and it would break it down, then I mean, wouldn't that be cool? And I think okay, that's not going to happen in the next 5 years, but I don't think that that's an impossible scenario. In terms of sort of forward looking, so like these options that maybe break down in the ocean, I think that specific example, there's sort of investigation that needs to be done. And a good example is when the plastic bag ban first came in. That's been a recurring topic this episode. But
Yeah.
when that came in, the shopping centres offered those bags, and they were reusable or they were biodegradable. But what that actually meant is that they just sort of fell apart, but the plastic is still there. So even if we can't see it, it still exists in the environment. It's still
Yep.
accumulating as microplastics. So we just have to be really careful with, for example, those plastic bottles that break down, that it's not a case of them breaking down so we can't see it, so it doesn't affect us like from a visual perspective, but that it's still there. It would have to, we'd have to be sure it's breaking down into something that can be recycled in the ocean, so a food product or something.
Yeah. So breaking down and not affecting the other species that live in the ocean.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I said, I haven't read it, so I don't know what those.
So I don't know. That's right. But there are lots of non-plastic options now for packaging and for containers and things. So I did work when I was in the UK on using cellulose as a replacement. So cellulose is plant derived. It doesn't break down into harmful plastic chemicals when it breaks down. It just breaks down into smaller cellulose segments and eventually down into basically sugars. So it is completely possible to make something that looks exactly like Glad wrap, basically, or cling film with cellulose instead of plastic. So if there was enough drive, and again, it's just more expensive.
I was going to say, what's stopping that from happening? But that is
So,
what it is expense.
At this stage, it's expense, but I think it's an artificial expense in that you can make cellulose or these similar plant derived polymers from potato waste, for example. So these are waste products that no one's using anyway. The limitation is sort of the factories that you need to produce it. Now, we already have factories that are making plastics, so that's the status quo. That's what's cheapest now. If it sort of got to the tipping point where the demand for cellulose-based products was enough, then you could synthesize them at an affordable price, right? It's like a scale. It's a manufacturing scale challenge, really. And I think that feeds into social pressure on companies to use biodegradable alternatives and plant-based alternatives, and again, policy pressure as well to use these alternatives.
Yeah. Well, I agree. I realize that you're very busy, and I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today. But we're at our time limit here, so
Better start talking.
Well, no, I want to let you go because I know you're a busy person, but I really do appreciate you coming on and speaking with me today. And I'd really like to speak to your mum in the future too about the airline industry, as you were saying,
Yes.
because I know that she works on the airlines, and we had a brief chat about um, the amount of plastic used on planes,
On
and
planes, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Having
so
just done an international flight, it's nauseating, to be honest.
it really is, yeah. So I've written a few articles about plastic waste on planes, and
Hmm.
I think that's really interesting as well. But thank you so much, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Excellent. Thanks for having me, Kathy.
This show has been brought to you by Earth. Earth, spelled Eorth, is an Old English word for Earth, representing Earth's dedication to a future inspired by the past, a world free from plastic waste. Earth specializes in sustainable home and beauty products that are gentle on both you and the environment. Earth's Australian made beauty range features Australian oils, butters, waxes, and botanicals, all packaged in recyclable and compostable materials. Earth's waterless beauty products are lightweight and perfect for travel, making it easy to maintain an eco friendly lifestyle wherever you go. Join Earth in embracing a sustainable lifestyle. Receive 20% off by visiting earth.shop and using coupon code and then what? Thanks for watching. If you've liked this episode, click like and subscribe below, and don't forget to keep asking, and then what? This show has been brought to you by Earth. Earth, spelled Eorth, is an English word for Earth. Earth, spelled Eorth, is an Old English word for Earth, representing Earth's dedication to a future inspired by the past, a world free from plastic waste. Earth specializes in sustainable home and beauty products that are gentle on both you and the environment. Earth's Australian made beauty range features Australian oils, butters, waxes, and botanicals, all packaged in recyclable and compostable materials. Earth's, wa- Earth's Earth's waterless beauty products are lightweight and perfect for travel, making it easy to maintain an eco friendly lifestyle wherever you go. Join Earth in embracing a sustainable lifestyle. Receive 20% off by visiting earth.shop and using coupon code and then what? Thanks for watching. If you've liked this episode, click like and subscribe below, and don't forget to keep asking, and then what?